So tonight's message is entitled Anxious to be Great. Anxious to be great. And I don't know how many of you actually watch the news, but there's been some like hot issues going around, especially with this issue with immigration and everything, you know. But another thing that happened in this past week was the death of a rapper called XXXTentacion. I hope I'm saying that right. Has anybody heard the death of this rapper? How many remember when Tupac passed away? We all remember Tupac, right? That was like the millennial generation. Okay, so the younger generation rapper that was like Tupac was this guy. I'm just going to call him XXX, okay? And he was shot and he was murdered. And so the younger generation is just going crazy right now. Listen, you guys, try. I know it's difficult to pay attention, but please try. Don't worry. Try to, drown out the extra noise, okay? And if possible, can the babies maybe go upstairs with at the kids' church?
Are they upstairs?
They are. Yeah. Yeah. So, how many heard about this rapper's death? Yeah. Okay, so it's all over. I really didn't know much about him, but as I've researched a lot more, because it's very important to understand what the younger generation is listening to and what they're being influenced by. Man, this guy was bad news. This guy was bad news. I did a little research on him, and I knew something was up because when I was out in Florida, I was just sitting in a Walmart parking lot, and my family was inside grabbing some food, and I'm hearing the same song. Every person that's passing by is listening to the same song. And then I just jumped on social media and I found out, oh snap, this guy died. And now everybody's playing his music, okay? So it's very important to understand, to listen to what this generation is listening to and what they're being discipled by, right? So this guy XXX is just really, really bad news, like I said. Or he was, and the influence that he had was immense. He was young. I think he was only 20 years old when he was murdered just last week. And as I did a little research on him, it appears to be that this guy had actually talked to people and had shared with other people that he had sacrificed his soul to the devil. Now, the type of music he had wasn't like corn, sort of rage, emo music. It was like a hip-hop and emo music. His music wasn't centered around so much of like materialistic gain, but more like that old Eminem kind of feel where you're just kind of sharing your emotional feelings of depression and mental illness and your fight between this and that, right? And he had like a lot of like a little disregard for humanity, okay? He's known for like, he had beat his wife, his pregnant girlfriend, he beat her up very badly. And I'm talking about the younger generation like worships this guy. This is the kind of influence that he had. In an interview with a singer that he used to, I guess, do music with, he says that yes, he would often talk about sacrificing his soul to the devil. And some of the videos that this guy put out actually says, hey, if I end up, being sacrificed one day. So there was this strange idea that one day he was going to be sacrificed, okay? And so all of this to say that this man had sold his soul to some degree to the devil. I don't know how, what that looks like, for fame, for the possibility of being heard, of being known. And so I started thinking about how far will man go to be great? How far will we go to feel accepted, to be known, to be heard? And so as I started thinking about that, I came across this verse today, and I thought maybe we could talk about it. It's out of Matthew chapter 16, verse 22. Can we turn our Bibles there? Matthew chapter 16, verse 22. And we'll start from there. And this is a very familiar passage. I'm sure all of us have read this portion before. Are we there? Matthew 16:22. Okay. From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and on the third day be raised to life. We all recognize this portion of Scripture, yes? Mm-hmm. Peter takes him aside and says, and begins to rebuke Jesus. I don't even know like how that works. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you rebuke God? You know? And he's like, never, Lord. This shall never happen to you. Verse 23, Jesus turned and said to Peter, get behind me, Satan. You, listen closely, he says, you are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. What are the concerns of God in the context of this scripture? And what are human concerns? Okay? Because he says that he's basically saying, Peter, you're in the flesh right now. Don't even talk to me. You're not thinking about the mission of God right now. You're thinking about human concerns, right? Yeah. So let's talk about the concerns of God first. Okay? Concerns of God. So we know that Jesus is in the middle of his ministry. He is on mission and he is submitted to God. And so when he's saying to Peter, what did he just finish saying to Peter? Hey, I'm about to die. And I'm about to suffer at the hands of A, B, and C. That right there is the concerns of God. Okay? The concerns of God in the context right then and there would be everything in Isaiah 53. Okay? A man is suffering. He's saying the concern of God right now for me, Peter, is that I'm a man suffering. That I'm going to be familiar with pain. That I will bear suffering. That I will be looked at as one punished by God. I will be stricken. I will be afflicted. I will be pierced for your transgressions. I will be crushed for your iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, right? He's saying, by my wounds, you will be healed. He's saying, Peter, you're not thinking about the concerns of God. You're not thinking about what he's trying to say is, Jesus, you need to escape this pain. You need to escape this suffering. Peter's like, this surely cannot be the will of God. And Jesus is like, listen, I can't roll with you right now. Because if I stick around, listen closely, if I stick around you, you're going to have me thinking outside the will of God. Wow. You're going to have me, that's why Jesus says, he's like, get behind me. He's like, shush up. He's like, be quiet, shut it. You're a stumbling block. He's like, don't try to move me away from the focus that I have on being obedient to God. Because you're not on the same wavelength of obedience right now. You're thinking fleshly. So what are some human concerns? I mean, I really want you to put yourself in Peter's place. You are rolling with the Son of God. I want you to think about this, okay? You're rolling deep with the Son of God. You are going town to town, miracles, helping people. Oh, pay taxes? I mean, how many stress about paying taxes? Listen, if you're self-employed, it is stressful, okay? They didn't even have to stress about paying taxes because Jesus is like, don't trip, I got you. I will just reach in the ocean and grab your fee out of a fish's mouth. You don't even have to worry about paying taxes. Listen, rolling with Jesus back in those days, in that time, was like really cool. Yeah. Think about everything that they got to see. They're through revelation of him, walking with him, they are slowly beginning to feel like, wow, there's power in rolling with Jesus. There's healing, there's miracles. He's defying the societal norms. He's coming against the rule of law Pharisees. There's a bit of like, man, this is cool. We're like rebels with Jesus. Also, can you put yourself in his place, right? Peter's like, and so imagine you're experiencing all those awesome things with Jesus, and then Jesus tells you, listen, I'm going to have to die, and I'm going to have to suffer, and I'm going to have to be betrayed. How would you feel? You'd be like, oh no, but this life is so cool right now. You're thinking about human concerns. You're thinking about convenience. You're thinking about the power and the clout that you had rolling with Jesus, right? You're thinking about how sweet life was. When you were hungry, if you didn't have enough food, it's all good. Jesus can just multiply it. There is convenience, right? What are some other human concerns that Jesus is accusing Peter of having? Just call it out. Think about it. You're all human, and you all battle with flesh on a day-to-day basis, hour-to-hour basis. I'll give you some examples.
Concerned about your safety.
Safety. Convenience. Wealth.
Health insurance.
Fame. Health insurance is safety. Health insurance is a safety net of some kind, right? That's security of some kind. You're thinking about, that's a human concern, security, right? Fame, influence, clout, power. These are all things that we struggle with on a daily basis, right? For this guy, XXX, perhaps it was acceptance. Part of his history was that he had been abandoned by his mother. And because she was a teen mom. And so he dealt with a lot of complex childhood trauma, being raised, a lot of fights. He learned that if he got in trouble in school, that meant mom had to come to school. And therefore he got attention from mom. And so as a child, he began to create these formulas. And so he learned to just sort of express himself through music and get his voice out there because he wanted to be heard. He wanted to be appreciated. Perhaps he wanted to be loved. He wanted to be accepted. And so these are all the human concerns that Jesus is telling Peter, stop, because you're going to be a stumbling block to me. I remember maybe, I don't know, a couple months ago, I was talking to somebody about the doors that God has been, opening up personally in my life. And they started saying, you should write a book. You should do this and you should do that. And I immediately felt so uncomfortable with that because it's not where I am right now, but it is where I used to be. And I'll share a little bit about that. But I felt that kind of talk was a stumbling block. I'm like, I'm content where I'm at right now. I'll wait. I know that will come if God wills for it to come. But I don't have to, break open that door right now. You know what I'm saying? That will happen in due time. But I started, and so that, you see that's that stumbling block. When people come around you, you should do this, you should do that. No, you can't do this. What are you talking about? Quit your job. No, you need to get a promotion. Don't quit your job. Yeah, you might be feeling that from God, but that's crazy. How are you going to pay your bills? There are some people in your life that might be a stumbling block. There's some people in your life who may not understand the particular mission and the particular directives that God has given you to be obedient to. And so we have to be wise enough and discerning enough, as Jesus was, to say, get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. Amen? Amen. Okay. And so he moves on. Then Jesus said to his disciples, listen. So, Jesus said that loud enough so the crew, so the gang could hear, right? Okay. And so, he said, get behind me, Satan. Everybody else's ears were perking up like, ooh, Peter's getting rebuked over there. You know what I'm talking about? Because, how I know that? Because it says, then Jesus said to his disciples. He didn't have to fill them in. He didn't say, hey, y'all, this is what Peter just said. No, he's like, then Jesus said to his disciples, because everybody was being all nosy and was overhearing the conversation. So Jesus, what did he do? Like a good parent would do? He made it a lesson. Okay? And Jesus said to his disciples, listen, whoever wants to be my disciple, whoever wants to be a follower of me, right? Must deny themselves. Must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Verse 25. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? Have you ever thought about that? That is the most expensive, priceless thing that you own is your soul. Did anybody see that? Did anybody see that clip from Chris Pratt going around?
Oh, yeah, I did.
Going around?
So
Okay. Chris Pratt, we all know him from Gardens of the Galaxy and maybe like Parks and Rec. Jurassic Park / World. Yeah. Okay. So he was, awarded some generation award, right? And I actually did a little research on him. And right before God opened doors for him to get into the movie industry, he was, hanging around some parking lot, and a guy received a word of the Lord for him. It was like, son, God is going to do great things in your life, but he wants you to honor him with it. And he left all his friends that night and actually began to go serve with this guy at an organization called Jews for Jesus.
Oh, wow.
And Chris Pratt heard the gospel and was saved and came up through Jews for Jesus. And then now look at all these doors that are opening up. And so he received this generation award, a couple weeks ago. And he starts telling, and without actually, being too preachy, he kind of preached the gospel.
Yeah.
And one of the things he said was, you have a soul. Be careful with it. And so Jesus says, something very similar. He says, what good will it be for someone to gain the whole world? This guy, XXXTentacion, right? He practically gained the whole world. He had fame. When Kanye West is tweeting you, how much further up can you go? Honestly, he gained the whole world, and where is he now? If people are saying that he sold his soul to the devil, I can't honestly and truthfully tell you where he's going, but I have an idea. I have an idea. So what is it if you gain the whole world? What is it if you get all the riches, all the fame, all the clout, all the power in this world, and you lose your soul? That's not a wise investment, if you ask me. Verse 27, for the Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with his angels, and then he will reward each person according to what they have done. Let's talk about that. He said, whoever wants to be my disciple. Whose disciple?
Jesus.
Let's just get that right. Because for some reason, I hear people, there's this bad sense of verbiage or terms that I sometimes hear throughout the universal church. Oh yeah, that's my disciple. We shouldn't be making disciples of ourselves. We make disciples of Jesus, right? We don't teach them in our ways, but we teach them in the Lord's ways. And so Jesus says, whoever wants to be my disciple, right, his disciple, we must deny ourselves and take up our cross and follow him. So let's talk about what denying ourselves look like. Because each and every one of you, if you have come to the saving knowledge of Jesus, have already, to some degree, operated in denying yourself. I remember one of the first things, God he moved very quickly in my life. Within the first year, I had lost my best friend. I lost my job. I'm talking about, there was all manner of loss and sacrifice and denying of myself that had to happen. It was like, I call it my incubation period. He removed me from how like a little bit of a yeast just ruins the whole loaf. It was kind of that. It was like all the yeast has got to go. You need to, this is where I want you. I want you just around children of God. I don't want you around worldly people. All my friends didn't understand what was happening in my life. They were like, did you join a cult? Because I was going to church like 2-3 times a week out of nowhere. When you fall in love with God.
Come on.
Do you remember, when you really like somebody, like you're just texting like all day long, right? You can't it's like you can't wait to see them again, okay? It was kind of, I was in love with the Lord. I just wanted to be in his presence. I just wanted to be in his presence. And people didn't understand that. I had to start denying myself. And then I remember when God was like, hey, now, you all know how I feel about drinking, and I'm not saying that drinking is a sin. However, for me personally, the Lord told me to not drink anymore completely. And I remember when I was struggling with that, because I had used alcohol to cope. And I was like, well, you know, God, this is what I'll do, God. I was negotiating. I was like, okay, there's no hard liquor. I'll just like drink a beer here and there. You know, I remember literally going on a prayer walk and negotiating with God. And I was like, that's what I'll do. You know, I'll just taper off. We'll be all good. And then I got this call, and they're like, hey, there's this great party, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I started feeling that tug. And you guys know that tug that I'm talking about in your spirit? And you're like, oh no, I feel conflicted. Does anybody remember, like, when you didn't feel conflicted about certain things, and then feeling conflicted about certain things? And I was like, oh no. And I remember jumping on the website, on my big old fat computer back in the day, because they weren't like nice and sleek like they are now. And I was like, should Christians dream? And you know what? This article was great. It wasn't Got Questions, but it was this guy's blog. And he was like, you know, well, Jesus did turn water into wine. And yes, you know, the Bible just says, you know, not to get drunk. And he said that. And at the very bottom of the article, he said, but 9 times out of 10, if you're reading this, it's because the Lord doesn't want you to drink it. I remember that, throwing myself on the bed as a single girl, and I was like, well, what am I going to do? Do I have to lie? You know, I'm like, I didn't know what to do. And I literally just made something up, and I didn't go. And so there was this season of denying myself, right? It's like this initial sanctification period that we've kind of all experienced as saints, right? But the denial doesn't stop there. We have to continue to deny ourselves. And I think that we can get duped sometimes. We feel like, oh, you know, we've met these checks in the box, you know. Well, I don't watch R-rated, but PG's okay. And I don't get drunk, but drinking a little bit is okay. You know what I'm saying? And so we settle with a particular amount or season of denial. Now understand that this denial is actually a continual thing, okay? And so it's denying former sin companions, best friends, anything that comes in competition with Christ. It's a life of continual denial. It's, Jesus, I'm 30 and like, where's my man? Where's my wife? Okay? It's like having those, you know, those seasons where everybody is like, society says you should be at a certain place and you're not. Yeah. That's also a form of like, that's also a season of self-denial. Denial of entitlement, right? Lord, I don't understand. I'm serving you. Why don't I have a job? Why can't I get a better paying job? Why haven't I got that promotion? Self-denial. Why haven't I got that husband, that wife? Lord, where's my child? I serve you. Self-denial. Those forms of entitlement can get you, especially as we get older. Because we feel like, man, I've paid my dues. How come I don't have this thing? I remember 3 years ago, I was, and I am, but it's harnessed and tamed, but a very ambitious person. I have a drive like crazy. And 3 years ago, I had this idea with this ministry that I continue to have called Live Revolutionary. And I wanted a website. I had envisioned multiple blog writers, and I would slave over this till midnight. No website, no money for a website, no problem. I will research how to create the website myself, and do the articles. Okay, so it was like a little bit too much, you know. It was kind of that like performance-based kind of mindset, you know what I'm saying? That like King Saul, the prophet Samuel is not here, no problem, I'll burn the sacrifice myself kind of thinking. You all get where I'm going with this, right? I had the tendency, to go before the Lord, okay? To go before the Lord. With godly, what I thought was godly ambition, but Lord, this is for you. The website would be for you. This service that I would do would be unto you, would be to glorify your name. Why won't you bless this thing? Why is it this new project or this new endeavor that I sought to do to glorify you has not been blessed? And so I crashed 3 years ago. I crashed. And I was like, you know what, God? I didn't necessarily call it self-denial, but it was. I said, you know what? I'm going to just take a seat. And I'm going to shelf this thing called Live Revolutionary. I'm going to shelf it. And I'm not going to pick it back up until you tell me to pick it back up. And I did that, guys. And that was hard. That was self-denial in terms of dreams. That was self-denial in terms of like wanting to create something. Has anybody ever been there? Does anybody else just have a dream right now where you know, like, man, I could do this. I could start this project. I could start this organization. I could start this business. But you know, if you do it, it would be outside the will of God, or at least outside God's current timing. Self-denial. It's continuous in the life of a believer. He says, take up your cross. So it's not just denial, it's take up your cross. He says, take up your cross and follow me. So taking up your cross would look like cheerfully receiving. So you remember all those things that we talked about denying? You wouldn't just be like, okay, fine. You would cheerfully receive those things. You would patiently bear those things. Every affliction and evil, however shameful and painful. Anything appointed unto you, anything He's called you to, whether it's singleness right now, whether it's barrenness, whether it's the struggle, the financial struggle. You hear what I'm saying? That you just can't seem to get out of. You patiently bear. This is part of taking up your cross. Everything that is appointed unto you. As every Christian has his own, to which you should quietly submit and carry with an entire resignation to the will of God in imitation of our Lord. And then he says, follow. He says, follow me in the exercise of grace. So in the midst of self-denying, and in the midst of taking up your cross and patiently bearing every affliction and everything appointed unto you, which remember, to be a disciple means you're following after your master. That's what a disciple is, right? The Jedi and the Padawan, right?
Yeah.
Okay, to be a Padawan means you're enduring and going through everything that the Jedi is going through, right? And so we are those Padawans, and Jesus is our Jedi. And so how are we to assume that as disciples we aren't going to experience the same kind, or it might look different, but suffering, affliction, and pain when we are His disciples? It's not just a word. So he says, in the exercise of grace. He says, follow me in the exercise of grace, humility, zeal, and patience, and self-denial. He says, follow me. I've done it. I've done it. I've set the course for you. I'm giving you the grace. I'm giving you the ability. I'm giving you my spirit. Self-denial, zeal, patience, humility. All in the discharge of every duty through sufferings and death to His kingdom and to His glory. Thank you, God. Amen.